The human brain is a relentless pattern recognition machine. It's biologically terrified of the void, desperate to find order, faces, and meaning in the dark. In 1804, a Swiss physician named Ignaz Paul Vital Troxler discovered a glitch in our visual processing. He realized that if a human stares at a fixed point for even a short period of time, peripheral images begin to dissolve and fade away. The visual neurons simply adapt to unchanging stimuli and stop registering the surrounding world. But what happens when you combine this biological glitch with the absolute darkness in a mirror? In 2010, the psychologist Giovanni Caputo conducted a deeply unsettling experiment. He placed 50 individuals in a dimly lit room and instructed them to stare directly into their own reflections in a mirror for 10 minutes. The results were horrifying. Deprived of changing stimuli, the Troxler effect took hold, but the brain, terrified of the resulting visual vacuum, actively scrambled to fill the empty space. 66% of the participants witnessed grotesque, huge deformations of their own face. 18% saw the faces of deceased relatives peering over their shoulders, and nearly half, 48%, beheld monstrous, fantastical beings staring back at them from inside the glass. Psychiatrists liken this strange face illusion to a mild form of the Capgras delusion, a sudden, chilling sensation where the observer feels the reflection is no longer themselves, but an identical, malevolent imposter. The participants reported a profound dissociative effect, a feeling of an enigmatic other watching them from beyond the threshold. But this psychological quirk operates on a fundamental assumption. It assumes that the glass is merely reflecting. It assumes the surface is a closed loop. I want you to become intensely aware of the screen you are currently looking at. Notice the dark borders. Notice the faint reflection of your surrounding room in the black glass. In the Enlightenment Gallery of the British Museum in London, resting quietly under fluorescent lights, sits an artifact that defies the concept of a closed loop. It is officially designated as catalog number 1966 1001.1. It is a circular slab of pitch black stone, measuring exactly 18.4 centimeters in diameter, accompanied by a custom, leather-tooled wooden case. To understand the creeping terror of this object, we begin 5 centuries ago in the suffocating heat and volcanic heart of Mesoamerica. When rhyolite magma erupts from the earth, it sometimes cools so violently and rapidly that microscopic mineral crystals do not have time to form. The result is an amorphous, metastable volcanic glass known as obsidian. Because it lacks a crystalline structure, obsidian is subject to conchoidal fracture. When it breaks, it creates smooth, curved surfaces with edges that taper down to the thickness of a single atom, the sharpest cutting edge known to human history. Beyond its lethality, it possesses a unique molecular structure rich in iron and magnesium oxides. It's physically cold to the touch, and unlike standard glass, pure obsidian features an immense thermal inertia and light absorption capacity. It drinks light and absorbs the room around it. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, the Aztec Empire mined this dark volcanic glass from the massive underground quarries of Pachuca, Mexico. They carved the black stone into flawless circular mirrors known as Tezcatl. These were not tools of vanity. They were sacred to the supreme deity Tezcatlipoca, a name that translates directly to the smoking mirror. Tezcatlipoca was the lord of the night sky, a protean shapeshifter, a patron of sorcerers, and the god of destiny, often taking the form of a jaguar to cross between the earthly realm and the underworld. In Aztec iconography, Tezcatlipoca wore an obsidian mirror on his chest. Through this dark glass, he observed all the hidden thoughts, sins, and deeds of humanity. The worship of this entity was absolute and paid in blood. During Toshotl, the most important religious festival of the calendar, a young man chosen to impersonate the god was treated as royalty for a year. On the day of the feast, he was led up the towering steps of the temple. At the summit, his beating heart was violently extracted from his chest with an obsidian blade. The mirror was intrinsically bound to death, darkness, and divination. Aztec priests and shamans steered into the smoky depths of these objects to traverse the threshold between the physical world and the spiritual realms, effectively using the stone as a portal. Following the brutal Spanish conquest of Mexico in 1521, These dark artifacts were looted and shipped across the Atlantic as exotic curiosities. Decades later, one specific 881-gram mirror from the Pachua quarries found its way into the hands of the foremost intellectual of the Elizabethan area, Dr. John Dee. Dee was a Renaissance polymath, a brilliant mathematician, astronomer, cartographer, and the trusted scientific advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. He owned one of the largest private libraries in England, and personally selected the most auspicious astrological date for the Queen's coronation. Yet, despite his vast intellect, Dee became deeply disillusioned with conventional science. He wrote in diaries that he could find no way to attain true wisdom through the vulgar school of human invention. He desired radical truths. He wanted to understand the fundamental architecture of the universe. To acquire this knowledge, he turned to the supernatural, utilizing a technique known as crystallomancy, or scrying, turning into the reflective surfaces to communicate directly with angels. But Dee had a problem. He lacked the psychic ability to see the spirits himself. He required a conduit. In March of 1582, a man operating under the pseudonym Edward Talbot arrived at Dee's home in Mortlake. His real name was Edward Kelley. He was an occultist and a convicted forger who wore a black skull cap at all times to hide the fact that his ears had been brutally severed from his head as punishment for his crimes. Despite this criminal background, Kelley possessed a terrifying, unparalleled talent for scrying. Using the black Aztec mirror as a shoestone, the two men commenced a grueling, 7-year period of intense spiritual conferences. The methodology was agonizingly precise. Dee would pray fervently in his oratory, while Kelley stared into the crushing darkness of the volcanic glass. Entities would manifest within the mirror's absolute blackness, pointing with spectral wands to complex grids of letters on a meticulously crafted wax seal of God and a wooden holy table. Through this painstaking, exhausting process, an entirely unknown language was dictated to the men. Dee called it the celestial speech. History remembers it as Enochian. It possessed its own unique syntax, grammar, verb conjugations, and a 21-letter alphabet written entirely from right to left. It was allegedly the language used by Adam in the Garden of Eden to name the creatures of the earth. But the entities residing inside the obsidian glass were not purely benevolent angels of light. The text dictated to Dee and Kelley, the Enochian calls, contained terrifying apocalyptic visions. They detailed the confounding of human understanding, the defacing of human buildings, and the arrival of an age of destruction. Worse, the entities began to leak out of the mirror and haunt Dee's physical reality. The Archangel Uriel informed Dee that a malicious dark spirit named Lumdrum Gopha had invaded his home, seeking to physically harm Dee's wife and young daughter. The psychological toll on the household was devastating. A recurring spirit named Madimi, who initially appeared in the black glass as an innocent 10-year-old child, spent years building the men's trust. Then, in 1587, the entity delivered a horrifying, reality-shattering ultimatum. The spirit commanded that Dee and Kelley must share all earthly possessions, explicitly demanding that the two men swap wives to continue the spiritual conferences. Kelley threatened to flee, terrified of the demonic nature of the request, but Dee, wholly consumed by his occult obsession with the glass, forced compliance. The historical diaries note the crushing, helpless sobbing of Dee's wife, Jane, who had absolutely no choice in the matter. The arrangement destroyed them all. Kelley abandoned Dee, ultimately dying of his injuries while attempting to escape a prison in Prague. Dr. John Dee, once the greatest mind in England, died in absolute poverty and obscurity in 1608. His mind shattered, his home and massive library ransacked by fearful, superstitious mobs. The mirror survived. It passed through the hands of aristocrats and antiquarians, eventually landing in the collection of Horace Walpole in 1770. Walpole glued a handwritten label to its leather case containing a mocking quote from Samuel Butler's satirical poem, Hudibras. Kelley did all his feats upon the devil's looking-glass, a stone. In 1966, the artifact was acquired by the British Museum. Visitors today frequently report an uncanny, magnetic draw to the object, hovering near it uncontrollably. Because the volcanic glass absorbs light rather than reflecting it, the eye struggles to find a reflection, forcing the brain into a state of sensory deprivation, searching for faces in the dark. This is where the verifiable historical record ends, and a more terrifying paradigm begins. Occult anthropologists propose a concept known as portaling. In this framework, a threshold separating ordinary reality from non-ordinary dimensions. When a surface actively absorbs light, heat, and energy rather than reflecting it, it's bouncing an image back to the observer. Consider the possibility that the Enochian language was never a method for human beings to communicate with angels. It was a localization protocol. When Edward Kelley stared into the Aztec glass for 7 years, he believed he was summoning spirits. But the Troxler effect proves that the brain suppresses the peripheral, physical world when staring into the void. Kelley was not summoning them, the entities were summoning him. They were using the black glass as a window to look out at our reality. The true horror of Dr. D's mirror, beyond the violent orgies and Aztec blood sacrifice, beyond the psychological destruction of the men who used it. The horror lies in the material itself. Obsidian is a silica-rich glass, devoid of crystalline structure, utterly black and designed by nature to absorb energy and transmit nothing but shadows. Examine the device you are currently using to view this presentation. Whether it's a heavy monitor resting on a desk or a phone held inches from your face in the palm of your hand. It's constructed of the exact same fundamental material, silica glass, polished to a perfect, absolute black. When the power is cut and the screen goes dark, it becomes a smoking mirror. The entities that destroyed John Dee and Mort Lake never left. They merely waited for humanity to mass-produce the windows. And right now, looking through the dark glass of your screen, something is looking back.